It was 1 year ago this week that we spoke on the telephone, Mr. President. Russian planes were in the air and tanks were rolling across your border. You told me that you could hear the explosions in the background.
A lot has happened. We're coming up on the 1 year anniversary. I remember the first time I talked to you, and I remember saying, hopefully this will wrap up soon. And I remember both of you saying, this is going to go for a long time. So are you,
Yes.
How are you holding up, first of all?
Right now, John and I are in Chernivtsi, which we left our home in Kyiv due to electric outages and power outages. So we are, well, I guess you can just like simply say it's a Western Ukraine. So we've been here since October. For us, it was not so much like we kind of, I know it's a sad thing to say, but you kind of get used to explosions. You understand how much time you have based on what's up there in the air, how much time you have to get down to the shelter. And you get used to the noise. You're not in the shock anymore, put it this way, not so much that you were used to it.
We're still functioning, we're still functioning. You know, we still go out on occasion and have some dinner at one of the local cafes and take the dog for a walk. You know, it's the weather is milder here than it is in Kyiv. It doesn't snow as much and it's not as cold.
President Biden announcing the U.S. will deliver a new $400 million aid package, including 31 advanced M1 Abrams tanks, the equivalent of a Ukrainian battalion, to help fend off Russia's military aggression.
Things have been ratcheted up greatly with the U.S. bringing in Abrams tanks, $2.5 to $3 billion worth of advisors, materiel, things that you really need. I'm sure that makes you feel good, but is it kind of aggravating to realize, hey, man, we needed this 7-8 months ago. Thanks. We appreciate it, but we've been telling you all along. So what's your reaction to that?
The problem with it is now is that the Russians are probably going to go on offensive before we have all that material to stop them. I mean, they have plans to try and stop them, but
let's not look the gifted horse in the mouth. just a little comment. For a little while there, I thought that United States has misplaced the balls someplace far away, and I didn't know where it was. I was like, what is going on? You should be able to deliver. I mean, you are the power nation, or, you know, I'm part of it. So where is your power? Meaning not that you think you have power, but the rest of the world needs to think that you have power.
So we're glad. We're happy. We know that it's a little bit late. It's going to take longer to get here, but in the end, you know, when you look at the equipment that the Russians have versus what's coming to us, you know, it's just,
why they bother?
It's
like,
apples
why?
and oranges, really.
Why don't they just like wrap it up and go home? Honestly, also a question of time. Just like the weapons, yes, I know they didn't get here as soon as we would like them to, but still they're coming. They will be coming. They will eventually get here. They know how much we know how much we're going to be getting. We know the quality of the, you know, everything that comes. And Russia is coming with, I don't know, pre-World War II.
To some extent.
Some of it is like revolutionary museum
pieces, yeah.
pieces, archives. Just go home.
This is one thing that intrigues me. In the last year, I can't help but think morale is everything in a war. And Russia thought this thing would be wrapped up May Day of 2022. They're still embroiled in this horrible war. I would imagine the morale of the Russian, typical everyday run-of-the-mill Russian troop is real bad right now. And the resolve of the Ukrainian people, I didn't think it could be possible, but I'm sure it's risen. Have you seen a change in like the last 10 months on both sides?
What I can tell you is that the Ukrainian resolve really hasn't changed. There have always been like, we're going to see this thing through to the end. The Russian message is changing a lot, and it's changing sometimes on a weekly basis. You know, based on the Telegram channels, things of that nature, there's a lot of problems going on within. What I can tell you is based on some conversations I've had with people that I know, that some of our boys, when I say our boys, I mean our Ukrainians, are having to leave the front line and go see their priests and their mental health counselors because they're literally slicing down hundreds of Russians with machine guns, with these, you know, and it's getting to them spiritually and mentally because they're just having to cut these guys down, and they feel awful about it. But that's what they're throwing at us. They're just throwing bodies and bodies and bodies and bodies, and they're just getting wiped out left and right.
And just a little note here. I know you said soldiers, but you know, I cannot call them soldiers. They are what's called zeki. Zeki is incarcerated individuals who actually been robbed of their rights. You know, they're still human beings, regardless of the crimes they committed in the past. But mostly, you know, when you were saying they're throwing soldiers at, those are people basically they took out of prisons. Some of them went voluntarily, but most of them didn't. They didn't have a choice. They took them out and they throwing them as basically as what do you call cannon fodder. And without any, and if you decide to, let's say, become a prisoner of war, or you decide to turn around, they just shoot you down. That's basically, it's a known fact. I mean, you have seen Kuvalda, which is like the public execution that was happening. That's basically it's a standard thing. So they don't have a choice. They just go in. They typically send them with like really bad weapons. It's just symbolic. You might as well send them with shovels. And they just go in, and everybody, that's how they cleanse the system within, and that's how they basically create problem because there are too many of them. And even so, even with that, you know, Ukrainian soldiers have issue with killing as many, it just gets to you. And you would think, you know, as much hatred as you would have by now, because how many families and how many people, innocent people died. Even so, you know, that's what kind of like, there's just that warmth.
Right. You can see the conscience of the Ukrainians versus the lack of it with the Russians.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, the whole argument that they're the same people is just, it's not true.
Mm-mm.
They're not the same people by any means.
It's not. You can see there is soul. Like you can see the rescued animals, dogs, cats, cows. There was a case with a python or something that Russians took from one of the zoos or something, and basically was in the burning tank. It took, I don't know, I don't understand what they thought they were going to do with him, but obviously they got hit and the tank was burning, and the python was like scrolling out. So they took python out and saved them, rescued them, and brought them
back to the zoo. You can see that the Russians are getting discouraged, even though they're trying to hold their game face still. But they're not doing
there is no game. Stop. There is no game. You have no game. You have the amount of people. I don't know who the soldiers. You have a crowd, and it just keeps coming, and they still have to be shut down. This, you know, we still need to use bullets on them. It's still a problem. However, you know.
How has your everyday life changed? I know you left Kyiv, that's the capital, bigger city, I'm sure, than where you are now. Also, do you want to keep this under wraps where you are? I don't want to mention any towns or cities.
No, we do it.
She already said it.
We said
I didn't want her to say it, but she said it already, so it's okay.
Yeah, I'll edit it out if you want. I just want to make sure. But how in the beginning, I know you your faith was tested. I know you were going to church a lot. You were discussing what was going on with the clergy. How has your spirituality changed or evolved in the last few months?
Well, that's a good question, actually. The problem with it is now is we don't know which church to go to because they found all these Russian collaborators working within the churches. Yeah, we had the church that you won't believe it. The church that's about 100 meters from our house was raided because they had a guy with pro-Russian propaganda who was actually a Russian citizen who was like, I don't know, a bishop or a priest there. So our spirituality is strong. We just don't go to church here because we don't know which one to trust. In Kyiv, we know which church to trust. Here, it's kind of iffy. We're not sure.
So Russia has people almost like spies acting like clergy to get information from people who are seeking comfort during war.
Right,
yes.
right. So in other words, they're kind of like very squeaky about it and quiet and just going in, and let's say they would be doing a sermon and they would be saying things in the way they just make Ukrainian people either doubt or feel bad for Russians or something else. And little by little, they start little. So they're not like obvious. They're not coming out and like waving Russian flags or anything. So that's why it's not quite obvious. But mostly they're plants. I call them чекисты. It's from the patriarch of Russia, Kirill, calls himself a patriarch. Yes, he's officially a patriarch, but it's hard for me. He's blessing like rockets and everything.
Yes.
So anyways, those are the plans from that side. And it confuses a lot of people. And the president is trying his best, obviously, on the ground to just handle it, because technically this is religious matter. On the other hand, it's a military martial law military situation. So how do you delicately handle that when SBU basically is rating it and not just finding propaganda, finding all kinds of things that are like, for example, some churches ended up housing agents
Yes.
within the premises. It was just like, I'm not gonna go into it, but it's a very complicated matter.
We text and sometimes speak with our priest in Kyiv.
Thank you. Yeah.
But we don't really go to church here.
Who, by the way, struggles also because his problem is he's young. And so many funerals, mostly soldiers. And he's just like, he's saying every couple of days, he's got a new funeral. Every couple of days, he has a new funeral. And that's tough. It takes a toll on you. And he's just, he struggles with it a little bit.
He confides in us a little bit, I guess, because he's having to hear, they're having to hear confessions from these guys who are killing all these Russians. And, that weighs on them.
Yeah,
it does.
What would you like to tell the American people? What is today? The 31st of January. The 31st of January, a year ago today, you were in Kyiv. You heard threats of war, but your life was completely different 365 days ago. How was your message to the world changed or evolved?
I'm glad to be an American here in Ukraine, to stand with these people because they're fighting for the very same things that we fought for in the 1700s and World War II. There's this sense of loyalty to them because of that. Because are they perfect? No. Were we perfect? No, we were not perfect. But they have this thing within them, this soul within them of freedom. Like they're just a free, loving people. And you can't help but to love them because of that, because you can see that we share that common denominator. That we just want to be free and live our lives. We don't want to bother anybody. We don't want to take over any land in Russia. We don't want to expand. We're not imperialists. We just want to live our lives peacefully and free in our own nation. And it's a beautiful country. And, we haven't even seen the parts that we want to see. But what I can say to the American people is that we're thankful that your taxpayer dollars are paying for the weapons that are coming here. We are. And I pay taxes in the States too. So, part of my taxpayer dollars are supporting Ukraine. And so we're thankful for everything that is being done. Could you do more? It would be great if you did more. But we're okay with what you're doing. Would we like fighter jets? Yes, we would really like fighter jets.
Yeah.
So that's my message. I don't know what Natasha's is.
Truthfully, I don't really have a message to anybody. I'm just grateful that the weapons are coming. And it's just, for me, the message is only gratitude at this point that we're still alive and there is hope. It creates hope that, maybe at some point it will be resolved.
I talked to a refugee from Portugal. Her mother was taken into custody a few times, taken to Russian prison. Her hatred for everything Russia, including their ancient culture, she said never again. How do you look at that when you look at the people of Russia and realize, hey, most of them are being brainwashed? That if they knew what was going on, so it's got to be a mixed feeling. It's got to be so complex. It's aggravating.
Now I live in Ukraine, And to me, it's just, I don't know, even showing me Russian matryoshka or something, one of those nesting dolls, that can cause a little disgust, truthfully. And that's me, who is, I have Slavic roots. And I just pray to God that I don't hold on to that hatred and somehow it heals, because just after seeing what they've done and what they can do and everything that Russia as a nation is basing itself on is lies.
Yes.
It's a stolen history from other nations, compiled into one thing, placed a name or a tag Russian, and calls everything else that belongs to other cultures as Russian. And it has been done for years.
I used to love Russian culture and Dostoevsky and everything. I don't necessarily hate it now. I can't look at it. I can't read it. I can't think about it. The only thing that, and we had this conversation just yesterday or the day before, the only thing where I can find any hope within myself right now for Russia is within some of the Orthodox saints, because we're Orthodox just like they are. And there are some great saints who came out of Russia. So I'm looking to the holy men only right now, and only the ones who are not promoting Russian imperialism, because there were plenty of holy men promoting Russian imperialism. Yeah. So you really have to be careful. And to conclude, Ukrainian culture is awesome, and we know almost nothing about it. It's going to have this blossoming after the war is over, the blossoming of Ukrainian culture. It's beginning now. You're seeing it. But I started reading some Ukrainian authors, which I never even knew about or heard of. And, there's this great history of writing and poetry and art and things of that nature. And all that's going to grow. And if it was really good, the Russians claim, like she said, like the Russians claim, well, that's Russian. But it wasn't. It was Ukrainian.
Basically, they're saying, well, they're just Ukrainians. They don't have right to exist. And you listen to that, and it's just at some point you start thinking, like, where in your head did it click and when?
Yeah. Am I in Germany in 1937, 1938,
how do you not see that?
That's how it feels.
How do you not see how mad this sounds? Like, and if you did have thoughts like that, how would you possibly say them out loud? You should find them within. But not only you're saying it out loud, you're saying it, this is how it should be. And it's just, to me, I can't be part of that. I can't be part of that anything. It's just when you listen to it, the only sense you have, if you a normal human being, meaning like, yes, you're flawed, but you understand, you have a moral compass, you understand what's right or wrong. The only possible feeling that you have after is, I need a full-blown shower after listening to some of the stuff, because it's just
what are you doing to get by? What's your comfort food, whether it be food or whether it be just intellectual sustenance?
So I don't lose my mind and keep my psyche and my mind intact through this whole thing. I signed up for classes at Longwood University, which is in Virginia. So I'm taking audiology and hearing science, anatomy, and phonetics and things like that. Those are prerequisites for my future plans if I make it.
She wants to become a speech language pathologist.
Either that or audiologist. I don't know. I haven't decided yet which way it's going to go, and if it's going to progress anywhere beyond my prerequisites. You have to have something to. You can't just hold on to that. You can't live and function through just the war, just the news, just what's going on, because it's always tragedy. It's always death. It's always sad, and you cry and you cry and you cry, but at some point you have to continue and you have to live your life.
I signed up for a 3-year course in Orthodox theology through the Antiochian Church of the British Isles, basically. So basically I do readings, I listen to lectures, and then I have to write papers, things of that nature. So that's like, I can't focus on the war all the time anymore. And I have to like filter what I do. I have a cigar on occasion. She told me not to show you the Ukrainian cognac, but the bottle's really cool. So, on my days off, I'll have a cigar and I'll drink. Like, whiskey's too expensive, but Ukrainian cognac, I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah. Loud and clear.
Is actually is actually, and the back side is even cooler.
It's actually really, really good.
It's
I tried it
really
with it.
tasty. So like I'll just have a glass of that and a cigar on my day off and calm down, you know, and say my prayers. And Natasha does yoga as well. So.
And I learned to do handstands because I figured, well, if your life is upside down, you might as well go upside down with it, you know. Work with gravity, don't work against. So just things like that. You have to keep yourself, you have to give your mind a break, because otherwise you will just simply go insane if you don't. It's yeah, it's one of it.
It's a challenge every day.
It's a challenge because it's been a year. Yes, and you have to. Sometimes, even if you don't want to, you have to.
We'll be okay. I think we're coming up on Lent, and which starts on February 27th. So that's always a very deep time for Orthodox Christians, because we fast from a lot of things. So
keeping your mind occupied is also one of those, you know, to make through it. But you know what they do say, you know, like when you started the interview, you said Russians wanted to capture Kyiv in 3 days, capture Ukrainian in 3 days. I don't know what they had in plan, but you know, in my mind, I was thinking, yes, maybe they did, but slow and steady.
Yeah.
What do they say about slow and steady?
And that's how long we're going to be with you, Mr. President, for as long as it takes.
We'll do it.
Thank you.